All right, well, we're here in week 2 of Easter. You're like, wait, what? Easter part 2? But, Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Yeah, and this is the thing. This is always true, right? I mean, we love celebrating Easter. We love doing that, but it happens all the time. And I kind of left the white cloth up. It'll be there for one more week. Because as I mentioned last Sunday, this is kind of a 3-part Easter service. Yeah, we just do things a little differently. What is that? Wool socks with Birkenstocks. It's just like us. We're just like you, a little different. Yeah, and that's true about me. But last week, I didn't want to hurt anybody with a family service. This week, all the hurt's coming out. Last week, wanted to keep it kind of more short and simple. This week, just buckle in, because we got a long way to go in a short time again. Anyway, some of you aren't Smokey and the Bandit fans, obviously. So this is part 2 of 3. Next week, we'll be covering kind of the third part, but then there's another section that happens 8 days later. We'll get there next week. But the tomb is empty, and that's what we really hit on last week. The tomb is empty. Mary saw the stone rolled away, and what she did when she saw that stone rolled away is she ran to tell Peter and John. And Peter and John, the stone's rolled away, they run to the tomb, and of course John's like, I got there first. Yeah, it always makes me chuckle. And but of course Peter goes in first. He sees the grave clothes there, the linens that he was wrapped in, and then his face cloth folded and set aside. And I know we mentioned this last week, bears repeating though, that it is intentional. The details that John covers, and we're going to cover some really cool ones this morning. The details he covers are really intentional, because the rumor was that Jesus' body was stolen. Would Jesus' body have been stolen if all his grave clothes were there and his face cloth neatly folded and set aside? No. Would the whole swoon theory, he didn't really die, but he kind of almost died. When they laid him down, he was able to get through, about 100 pounds worth of stuff, and then he'd have the presence of mind to be able to, none of that. I mean, it was all malarkey. What is true is that Jesus rose from the dead. And so John gives these details so that we might believe, And so they go to the tomb, John and Peter do. They burst into the tomb, at least Peter does, and John goes in later. And they see this, and then what do? After this amazing revelation, this powerful experience, this most perplexing, astounding, and confounding scene, what do? They walk home. That's what they do. Says then the disciples went back to their homes. Peter and John, after seeing what they saw, left. John also adds it was clear they didn't understand what the scripture has said. They believed, but what they believed was, Jesus wasn't there, okay? But what happened? They still didn't really know. And so, I'm not sure I would have done much different if I was in their shoes. We joked a bit about that's kind of what guys do. It's like, go home and figure it out and grab a snack or something. I don't know. But the sad thing is they didn't stop. The sad thing is they didn't ponder. The sad thing is they didn't wait to see what the Lord was doing in this most sacred moment. And my guess is, if you were to have this conversation a week later, maybe even just a few hours later, if you would have waited, would you have? If you would have just held on for just a minute, would you have? I'm sure they'd both be like, well, yeah, I probably would have waited. Because that's exactly what Mary does. Mary Magdalene comes to she stays there. She waits. She weeps. She lingers longer. And she was very blessed in doing just that. So let's read together in John 20, verses 11 to 18. We're going to cover the second half of what we were going to cover last week, that I know you're really glad that you came back and saw part 2 of 3. So if you need a Bible, there's one in front of you if you want to read up here. But I just want to make sure that we're listening to some things like maybe we haven't read before. Let's read through this. John 20, verse 11. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. And as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing. She did not know it was Jesus. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." And Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he had said these things to her. Too good to be true? Covered this last week. Too good to be true? If it seems too good to be true, it must be God. Mary is not looking for Jesus to be alive. It's very clear. She stood weeping outside the tomb. She wept and stooped to look into the tomb, weeping, sobbing, deeply moved, in great sadness. This was all-consuming, as you could only imagine. Mary hurt deeply because she loved deeply. She loved much because she had been forgiven and delivered from much. This was a beside herself kind of moment. She was there to embalm Jesus. Apparently she didn't know that Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus had already taken care of that. She was on a mission. I must care for my Lord. And you can only imagine that Mary was emotionally distraught. So much so that Mary was missing all that was going on around her. Have you ever been in that kind of deep grief? Where something has affected you so deeply it's hard to even see straight with what's in front of you? This is what was going on with Mary. The angels talked to her and she didn't even know what was going on. She didn't recognize these two angels, or that they were angels, most likely. She didn't see the grave clothes there. She didn't see the cloth folded and on the side. She didn't see any of that. All along, we as readers are getting some amazing insight. And I pray that we see these insights today. Because John includes these details very importantly, very carefully, very intentionally. And Mary doesn't recognize these two in the tomb to be angels. Verse 12, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. Two angels on a slab, one at the head, one at the foot. Is there any other picture you may have in your mind of two angels sitting on a slab, so to speak, maybe in that case on the top of an ark of the covenant? The Ark of the Covenant represented the presence of God. It represented the place where the high priest would come in and they would sprinkle blood on, and there would be great forgiveness of sin that would be there. The picture here is pretty astounding. We're going to read in Exodus 25 where God first gives instruction to Moses, or through Moses to the people. It says, "You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits shall be its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold of hammered work. You shall make them on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on one end and 1 cherub on the other end, one piece with the mercy seat. Of one piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings and their faces to one another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark shall put the testimony that I gave you. There I will meet with you, and from the mercy seat, from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that on the ark of the testimony I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel. This is a significant thing that happens. And while Mary did the right thing, waiting, while she wept and while she waited, she was wanting to honor Jesus. And in the midst of that, she sees this scene that she doesn't even recognize what's going on. I'm sure it's something that she would see later. But these angels, the head and the foot of where Jesus had laid, where the mercy seat was fulfilled. It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful scene. And here, in the midst of this tomb, it was only holy because Jesus makes it holy. His blood was shed and it was on the mercy seat. We've already talked about the temple veil being ripped into two. We heard these words that Jesus declares, "It is finished," tetelestai. This declaration of the victory has been won. The price has been paid. God's justice has been satisfied. It's finished. Jesus declares this. And all of this significance, Mary has yet to understand or see. As is with many holy moments, we miss it until we start to look at it later and we dig deeper. It points to the fulfillment of total forgiveness. And the writer of Hebrews tells us this in Hebrews 10. And every priest stands daily at his service, offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God. It is finished. That position of sitting down at the right hand of God is a position of fulfillment. It was accomplished. He is in a place of rest because it has been done. This is an amazing picture that was right there in front. And so we see as we go through this, Jesus fulfills the two most significant feasts that the people of Israel to this day celebrate. We just went through Pesach or Passover, the Passover lamb that was sacrificed for the death angel to pass over. And we see Jesus was crucified at the very hour the lamb would be sacrificed. At that very hour at 3 p.m., Jesus himself was the true, perfect fulfillment of the Passover lamb. But we also see that he's also the perfect fulfillment of Yom Kippur. In the fall, there is this Day of Atonement. This is the day that the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies, sprinkle blood in front of the altar of the ark, and sprinkle blood in the midst of the cherubim as a sacrifice for the forgiveness of their sins. The priest would sacrifice for himself and for his own sins, and then go in for the people of Israel. Reading through the book of Hebrews, it's awesome because it's all about this and how Jesus is our perfect high priest. So Jesus is the fulfillment of both of Passover and of Yom Kippur. He is the Passover lamb, and he is the perfect sacrifice. And we see all of this in just this moment where Mary peeps in to the tomb and she sees these angels. She sees what she's not recognizing right away. And they ask her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" Do you think they not know why she's crying? When I was studying this and reading into it deeper, and some of my favorite aha moments come in conversation with my wife. So we were talking about this. And this question hit me a little differently this time. It's like, "Woman, why in the world are you weeping? Woman, why are you weeping? Do you not understand that the sacrifice for your sins has been made once and for all? Do you not understand that the power of darkness has been broken forever? Do you not understand? He is not here. He is risen. Woman, why are you weeping? You should be rejoicing." She doesn't understand this yet. None of us probably would. But the angels understand perfectly what's going on. We know that through the Gospels, Jesus prophesied several times that he would die, and on the third day he would what? He would rise. He prophesies it several times. In fact, later in the Gospel of Mark chapter 16, Jesus rebukes his disciples for their hardness of heart and for their unbelief because they didn't get it at first. They didn't believe at first. But the angels understood exactly what was going on. Why in the world would you be weeping right now? You should be rejoicing. Did we weep like that on our wedding day? Hope not. It was like the best day of my life. Do you weep like this when your loved one comes home that you haven't seen in a long time? When our son comes home to visit, man, it is awesome and it's great rejoicing. And it's like the angels are saying, don't weep in a way that you'll miss the one who's literally just around the corner. We understand this now. But now we understand what the angels had to say was much more than what we have ever understood. They have taken away my Lord. This is her answer, an honest answer. They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they have laid them. How does she respond? She had one mission. She had gone to the tomb because she was there to embalm her Lord. She wanted to honor him. She wanted to respect him. She wanted to show him the honor and the respect and the love for him that he had shown for her. She had a mission, and she needed to complete it in her own heart, in her own mind. She had to get this done. Mary then has the same kind of encounter with Jesus. Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she didn't know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" Same question. Then he asks, "Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener. She said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." She's still on mission. Maybe it's because she's weeping so much she doesn't recognize it to be Jesus. Maybe because Jesus' appearance was a bit different. After all, we see that he passes through walls, and he probably just passed right through those grave-clothed garments as he takes it off and folds the face cloth off to the side. We don't know exactly why Mary doesn't recognize him, mostly because she wasn't looking for Jesus. Look for your glasses that are sitting on your head. Where is my wallet? Oh, there it is. Sometimes we look so hard for something that we miss it when it's right in front of us. Why are you weeping? Who are you seeking? Mary answers through tears, through her sorrow, through her desperation. "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've laid him, and I will take him away." Maybe she knew that they'd laid Jesus in a convenient location. John says in a nearby tomb because it was dark and it was about time for, maybe she thought that maybe he was kind of put here as like a holding place and they were going to move him to someplace else. It didn't matter to her. She just knew that she was looking for Jesus. He wasn't there, and she's trying to find him, and maybe this guy knows something. She's still in the middle of all of this. And in it all, I have the utmost respect for Mary. I really do. She's persisting to press in. And the reason that she's there to show her love for her Lord, she wanted to honor Jesus above all. Then she hears these words from Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Mary." In Hebrew, the word's Miriam. Mary. And what she didn't recognize with her eyes, she recognizes with her heart. She hears his voice call her name. Jesus speaks her name, and all that needs to be said is said. Everything that needs to be done is done, and all doubts and fears are dissolved like a snowflake on your face. It's done with that one declaration, that one speaking of her name. The same Jesus who spoke the world into existence, declared the goodness of God, delivered seven demons from her, declared it is finished, and just 2 days before, that same Jesus calls Mary by name. And you know what? It was all settled. Mary was caught up in her grief until Jesus called her name. Mary had 1,000 unanswered questions until Jesus called her name. Mary needed nothing more than to have the risen Christ call her name. John 10 tells us, Jesus says, the sheep, or my sheep, hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. Jesus doesn't correct her. Jesus doesn't even tell her who she is, or who he is. He calls her by name. And this whole lesson was spoken in one word. Maybe it reminded her of the first time he called her name. Maybe it reminded her of the authority with which he calls her out of demon possession and into a place of freedom. Maybe in that moment she was feeling another deliverance from this fear that was gripping her heart so hard. This deliverance that brought her into a place of great freedom yet again. He called her by name. And that's all she needed. She clung to him. And Jesus gives her instruction. Jesus said to her, do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. The commentators and Bible scholars admit this is one of the more difficult passages of all the New Testament. Like, don't cling to me. Some of the early teachings was like, you can't touch me yet, I'm too holy to be touched. I'm not done with my mission yet. Some have conjectured that Jesus had to go back up to God and come back down and go up and come down and all of that. But it's a difficult passage to understand. So in going through this, I feel like that the most likely answer and the easiest answer is that Jesus wasn't telling her, don't touch me. There are other places that we'll see even in the next chapter where Jesus is touched. But he's saying, don't cling to me. There's a new reality that's happened. Jesus is no longer an earthly, fully flesh human on earth to teach as his mission had led him up to this point. The rules have changed in her mind, and she didn't know it quite yet. He wasn't going to be there very long, and she didn't know that quite yet. His role as earthly teacher has now changed, and a new covenant has been born. The way she knew him before is now different. He's saying he'll see her soon, but first he had other things that he needed to do. If you go to the book of Luke, you see that Luke kind of joins a couple of dudes on their way to Emmaus, and he talks to them a little bit. They didn't recognize who it was, maybe for the same reason Mary didn't recognize him. It says that he kept them from recognizing him until he explains to them how the Son of Man must be risen, and all of a sudden their eyes open. Oh my word, we have been with Jesus this whole time, and he's gone. Kind of cool. In his glorified-ish body, right? Not the same picture we have in Revelation 19, but it's a powerful picture nonetheless. His work wasn't quite done on earth. Then Jesus puts her on a mission. He says, go to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Do you realize this is the first time Jesus ever calls his disciples my brothers? He'd called them friends. He'd called them servants as a fellow servant. He had called them other things, but he had never called them brother until now. And here is this group of people he is sending her to. Call them my brothers, the ones who were still in disbelief. They had scattered, most of them. They had denied him. One directly denied him, Peter, 3 times, and he still calls them brothers. He's establishing here, there's a new relationship that's now been established because the price is paid, because the curtain veil has been torn, because now we have access to the Father. There's a new covenant that's been established. Mary becomes the first evangelist to the message of the risen Jesus. Don't you love that picture? I drew it myself. Some of the commentaries add, Jesus made a woman the first witness of his resurrection. The law courts of that day would not recognize the testimony of a woman, but Jesus did. And as we've stated, this is a very important detail. A detail that helps us to hold these Gospels in higher regard, because this is not a likely story. This isn't something that they would be like, Mary told me about it. I left. I went home. But she hung out and she got to see Jesus face to face. She was the first to see Jesus. That would not have been a likely story. Women were not allowed to testify in court. Their testimony wasn't considered valid. But it was to Jesus. And the first evangelist to proclaim the risen Lord. See, Jesus chooses unlikely candidates. Aren't you glad? Both men and women, his disciples, not likely candidates. Well, you read in the book of Acts, they're like, who are these guys? These are unlearned Galileans. These guys didn't go through teaching. They weren't students of Gamaliel. They didn't know their head from their tail. That was close. But they knew Jesus. And their testimony changed the world. Classic theologian R.C. Ryle puts it this way: those who seek Christ diligently and love him deeply often receive the sweetest revelation and the clearest calls to service. Peter and John left. Mary stayed. She lingered. Was blessed beyond her imagination. Jesus tells her to go and proclaim this message. So verse 18 says, Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord, and that he said these things to her. And we'll pick this up next week. Some of the Gospels say they didn't believe her outright. John doesn't say that. But the first response was they didn't take her to be credible. They took her to be emotional. They maybe took her to be otherly. We saw that the grave was empty, but we're not sure exactly what that means. You say you met Jesus, but we'll get to that next week. But as I was pondering this, some of the first reads is pretty easy. Peter and John left, Mary stayed. Peter and John missed a blessing that Mary had. And then I started going into my own time with the Lord. How often do I linger longer? Do I consider my time with the Lord as sufficient when I'm just kind of listening to the Gospel of John in my car? Like I'm really spiritual because I download cool apps so we can hear it read in a lot of different languages. Not languages. Well, yeah, languages, but different versions and stuff. And we're high-fiving God on the way outside the door. How often do we linger longer? Because if this is where you're trying to get all that you can eat during the week and expect this one meal to last you through the whole week, you are going to be malnourished spiritually. The invitation here that the Lord was really reminding me of. Blessed are those who linger longer, for they shall hear God. That's not a real beatitude, that's a Bill attitude. Maybe just trying to find the answer isn't the point. Maybe trying to experience the presence of God is. Jesus calls her name, and everything was settled. Have you ever had a prayer time like that before? You just hear him call your name. He just says something simple to you, and this whole book is unpacked right before your eyes. The Holy Spirit can do in seconds what we're just kind of trying to find, but not stopping to linger. My prayer is that we would be people, that I would be a man who would linger longer. I would wait. I would stay. I would listen. Samuel, as a kid, was dedicated to the Lord, the prophet Samuel. Dedicated, and as a kid, he's in his quarters with his mentor, Eli. Most of you know the story. A lot of you do. Samuel's laying there, and all of a sudden he hears, Samuel, Samuel. He gets up and he runs to Eli. Here I am, you called me. And Eli says, what? I didn't call you. Go back to bed. Samuel goes back to bed, and he hears it again. Samuel, Samuel. He runs back to Eli. Eli, you called me. I mean, come on. That's maybe the Jewish, come on, Samuel's like, or Eli's like, nope, didn't call you. And he does it a third time. Finally, Eli gets it. And he said, next time you hear, say, speak, Lord, for what? Your servant is listening. Your servant hears. So instead of running to find out who was calling his name, he stopped and he listened, and God unpacks this. If you read the word that God gives Samuel as a teenager, young teenager, it's like this amazing revelation he gives him. You know, I've said this before, but I pray this prayer often. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. I don't get it. I don't know why. I don't have enough answers. These doctors are still practicing. They don't get it. They don't know. I'm just sick of being their lesson plan. I want to know. Speak, Lord, if your servant is listening. Blessed are those who linger longer, for they shall hear God. Worship team, can you come up? I know that there are some of you who are wrestling with things in your own life. And maybe the Lord's just speaking to you right now. Stop doing and listen. Maybe all that you're doing is well-intentioned. I mean, Mary was just trying to take care of her Lord. She's trying to honor him. She was trying to do all the right things. But she was missing what was right in front of her. Until the Lord called her name. Peter and John didn't even have the privilege. So maybe as we come to this time of communion, you make a new commitment. Maybe you're really good at lingering longer, and your time with the Lord is sweet. And I love that's true, because I know it's true of some of you. And some of you are just busy. Maybe you're retired, but man, you're busy. And your mind isn't there to just linger longer. May the Lord remind you today. Wait. Listen. Create space. You don't know. I got to get up at 3 a.m. I got to blah, blah, blah. I get it. We've all had seasons where we've been really busy, and I understand. But I'm telling you what, you will not be able to do what God has called you and created you to do if you do not linger longer. You'll always be on the edge, but not in his presence. May we be people of his presence today. we set aside this time for communion so we can do just that. So you can linger longer.